I need to stop everything right now and get this out to you, because something has fundamentally shifted with this storm system over the last 3 hours, and the threat level for today has escalated in ways that demand immediate attention. I'm telling you this without exaggeration, and without using language. I do not mean we are dealing with a life-threatening situation unfolding across a major portion of this country right now. I do not deploy the phrase life-threatening in my titles or in my warnings, unless I genuinely believe it applies, and I genuinely believe it applies to what is happening as I speak. The Storm Prediction Center, which is the authoritative forecasting body for severe weather across the United States, has just upgraded their severe weather outlook for this afternoon and this evening. The parameters that have come in on the latest model runs are some of the most alarming numbers I have personally analyzed in a very long time. We are no longer talking about a typical severe weather day where we might see some strong storms and isolated tornadoes scattered across a region. We are now talking about a meteorological setup that has rapidly intensified into something with genuine potential to produce significant, violent, long-track tornadoes across a geographic corridor that includes millions of people. These millions of people need to be hearing this information right now, and they need to be taking it seriously. If you are watching this video, I'm asking you to please share it. Please send it to everyone you know in the threat zone, because the specific information contained in this warning could genuinely make the difference between life and death for someone today. I understand that sounds dramatic, and I promise you that I am not being dramatic. Let me show you exactly what changed in the last 3 hours, and explain why this change means everything about how you need to be approaching the next 6 to 8 hours of your day. This morning, the initial model runs were showing what we would call a concerning setup for severe weather. There was organized dynamics present, there was instability beginning to build, and there were signals for tornado potential. However, there was enough uncertainty in those morning forecasts that meteorologists and forecasters were hedging somewhat on the higher end of tornado potential. They were being cautious. They were presenting scenarios that included significant tornadoes, but they were not committing fully to the most extreme outcomes. That uncertainty has completely evaporated as of this afternoon. The afternoon model runs have come in with dramatically different solutions, and they have come in screaming. The instability values that are now being analyzed across the warm sector ahead of this system are not simply above average for this time of year. They are extraordinary. They are values that you see only during the most significant severe weather setups. We are currently looking at CAPE values, which is a measure of atmospheric instability, and the energy available for thunderstorm development, ranging from 3,500 to 4,500 joules per kilogram across portions of the primary threat zone. Let me put that number into a context that will help you understand exactly how significant this is. Back in 2011, the Joplin tornado outbreak, which produced a catastrophic EF5 tornado that killed over 150 people and caused billions in damage, was working with CAPE values around 3,000 joules per kilogram. That outbreak, the Joplin outbreak, was the deadliest and most destructive tornado on a single track in recorded American history, and it was occurring in an environment with CAPE values around 3,000. Today's warm sector, particularly in the highest risk area, is running above all of that. That is already a shocking data point all by itself, but it becomes even more significant when you look at what happened on April 27th of 2011, which was the super outbreak, the single most devastating tornado day in modern American history. Multiple significant tornadoes struck across a wide geographic area that day, particularly across Alabama and neighboring states. The CAPE values during that super outbreak, the most active tornado day on record, were in that same range, around 3,000 joules per kilogram. Today, we are looking at values that are substantially higher. This is not splitting hairs or engaging in meteorological nitpicking. This is a fundamental difference in atmospheric energy availability. When you take that level of instability and you pair it with the wind shear profile that we are currently analyzing, you create an environment that is not merely favorable for significant tornadoes. You create an environment that is almost aggressively encouraging violent long-track, potentially wedge tornadoes. The effective layer shear values, which measure wind speed and direction changes through the atmosphere, are running between 60 and 75 knots across the threat zone. That is an extremely powerful measure of wind shear. Beyond that, the storm relative helicity values, which measure the rotation within the atmosphere relative to storm motion, are exceeding 400 meters squared per second squared in the best part of the setup. When you combine these numbers, when you have CAPE in the 3,500 to 4,500 range, combined with effective layer shear of 60 to 75 knots and SRH values exceeding 400, you do not have simply an environment favorable for significant tornadoes. You have an environment that is essentially screaming for violent long-track, potentially wedge tornadoes. You have an environment that has been arranged by nature in precisely the way needed to produce the most dangerous tornado scenarios. The significant tornado parameter, or STP, is a numerical index that combines multiple atmospheric variables to produce a single number representing the probability and intensity of tornado potential. Anything above 1 is considered favorable for tornado production. Anything in the 2 to 3 range indicates a moderately strong environment for tornadoes. Values above 4 are considered quite favorable for significant tornado production. Across the highest risk corridor of this setup, the STP values are currently running between 5 and 9. Let me emphasize that, between 5 and 9. These are extraordinary values that you see only during the most significant severe weather days. This is not a borderline setup where we might see some tornadoes and we might not. This is not a situation where meteorologists should be hedging or expressing significant uncertainty. This is what we call in meteorological circles a loaded gun pointed directly at communities across this region. This is an environment that has been set up in the most dangerous possible way, and communities that fall within the threat corridor need to be taking shelter right now. The Storm Prediction Center, acknowledging this extraordinary threat, has issued a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk of severe weather for today. For those who may not be familiar with the SPC severe weather risk scale, a level 5 risk, which is the absolute maximum, is issued only for the most catastrophic severe weather days in American history. A level 4 moderate risk is the second highest category and is reserved for significant widespread severe weather setups with high confidence in that threat. Within that moderate risk, the SPC has issued something called a hatched significant tornado area. This is a designation that means the Storm Prediction Center's professional meteorological forecasters have determined that the probability of EF2 or stronger tornadoes is high enough that they need to explicitly and urgently communicate this to the public. This hatched area is not a maybe scenario. This is not an advisory or a suggestion to be prepared. This is professional meteorological judgment delivered with confidence that significant, potentially violent tornadoes are expected this afternoon. Expected, not possible, not likely, expected. The hatched significant tornado area covers a specific geographic corridor that I need every single person watching this video to pay very close attention to. This area extends from northeastern Oklahoma, running northeast through southeastern Kansas, continuing through southwestern Missouri, and extending into western Arkansas. If you live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you are inside this hatched area. If you live in Joplin, Missouri, you are inside this hatched area. If you live in Fayetteville, Fort Smith, or any community in that region of Arkansas, you are inside this hatched area. If you live in Springfield, Missouri, you are right on the very edge of this hatched area, and you need to be treating today exactly as if you are directly inside it. The communities that fall within this corridor need to understand that tornadoes today are not a possibility that might happen. They are an expected outcome of the meteorological setup that is unfolding. To understand why this situation has become so critical so rapidly, I need to explain what changed in the last 3 hours. This is important because understanding why the threat escalated so dramatically will help you understand the urgency we are facing right now. The overnight cloud cover across the warm sector had been suppressing surface heating. When clouds block the sun during the day, they prevent surface heating and therefore prevent the atmosphere from becoming as unstable as it could potentially be. This morning, meteorologists were forecasting that this cloud cover would persist through much of the afternoon, which would cap the instability and prevent it from becoming as extreme as it could be. However, that overnight cloud cover has cleared out much faster than models predicted this morning. As a result of this faster than expected clearing, surface temperatures have surged into the middle and upper 70s Fahrenheit across northeastern Oklahoma and southeastern Kansas already this afternoon. Those are warm surface temperatures. Simultaneously, dew points, which measure the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, are running in the middle to upper 60s Fahrenheit. When you have surface temperatures in the upper 70s and dew points in the upper 60s, the amount of energy available for thunderstorm development becomes almost incomprehensible. The temperature difference between the surface and the dew point is relatively small, which means the air is saturated with moisture. The air is warm. The atmosphere essentially becomes like a compressed spring that has been wound up as tightly as possible and is simply waiting to be released. The cold front that is racing east out of the Rockies is going to be the mechanism that releases that spring. The first supercells are already firing along the dry line as I'm recording this video. These are not hypothetical storms that might develop later. These are actual storms that are forming right now, and they are going absolutely berserk on radar. I am watching rotation signatures developing on multiple cells simultaneously. I'm seeing wall clouds and clear rotation indicators that tell me these storms are already capable of producing tornadoes. This is just the beginning of what is going to be a very long and very dangerous afternoon and evening across this region. The tornado warnings are already being issued for portions of this threat zone, which means that meteorologists have identified rotating storms that pose an imminent tornado threat. If you live in an area where a tornado warning has just been issued for your county, you should not be watching this video. You should not be on your phone. You should not be gathering supplies or taking any actions other than immediately getting to your shelter and staying there until the warning has been issued. I need to walk you through the specific timing of this event because this timing is arguably the most critical component of this entire warning. Understanding when the most significant tornado threat will occur is essential for making decisions about how to protect yourself and your family. Right now, between noon and 2 o'clock this afternoon, the initial supercells that are firing along the dry line across northeastern Oklahoma and southeastern Kansas are already tornado capable. There are active tornado warnings already in effect as I'm recording this video. If you are in any of these areas right now, you need to prioritize getting to your shelter immediately. The tornado threat is not something that will develop later, it is present right now. If there is a tornado warning currently issued for your county, if your phone has just alerted you to a tornado warning, that takes absolute priority over everything else, including watching this video. Stop watching, get to your shelter, and come back when the warning expires. Between 2 and 5 o'clock this afternoon is the window that I am most concerned about for the most significant tornado potential of this entire event. This is the window where the supercells are going to be at their most discrete, most organized, and most dangerous state. This is the window where the instability is going to be at its peak, where the shear profile is going to be most favorable, and where storm organization is going to be optimal for producing violent tornadoes. The storm motion, the speed and direction at which these storms are moving, is running around 30 to 35 miles per hour toward the northeast. That is actually relatively slow motion for this time of year. In spring, storms often move faster than this. The significance of this slow motion cannot be overstated. Slow-moving supercells in an environment this unstable have significantly more time to strengthen and organize. They have more time to produce long-track tornadoes. They have more time to encounter community after community along their path. A supercell that fires near Tulsa at 2 o'clock this afternoon and moves northeast at 30 miles per hour could still be on the ground producing tornadoes near Joplin at 4:30 in the afternoon. That is a distance of roughly 75 miles. That is the kind of scenario that is genuinely on the table today. Everyone in that path needs to understand this possibility. Everyone in the path of a slow-moving supercell in this environment needs to understand that the tornado threat does not exist for just 5 or 10 minutes in their community. The threat could persist for hours as individual supercells produce multiple tornadoes along their track. Between 5 and 8 o'clock this evening, the storm coverage is going to become increasingly widespread and complex. As the cold front catches up to the dry line, it forces additional storm development across a much broader geographic area. What was initially a focused threat zone becomes a more widespread threat zone. The storm environment begins to evolve. While the peak threat window for the most violent long-track tornadoes is between 2 and 5 this afternoon, the extended threat window through the evening hours means that tornado potential will persist across portions of this region well into the evening. The atmosphere will not suddenly become benign when the clock reaches 5 o'clock. The energy will still be there. The shear will still be there. Storms will still be rotating and producing tornadoes, though they may be somewhat less organized and slightly less violent than during the peak window. This setup represents a fundamental departure from what we normally see during spring severe weather events. The instability is extraordinary. The shear profile is locked in perfectly for rotation. The moisture is abundant. The timing is aligned. The cold front is moving at an appropriate speed to optimize storm development. This is not a setup with scattered tornadoes across a large area. This is a setup optimized for producing significant violent tornadoes concentrated in a relatively narrow corridor. The meteorological parameters all point in the same direction. They all suggest the same outcome. The models all agree. The atmospheric soundings all agree. The surface analysis all agrees. This is an exceptionally dangerous situation. For those of you in the affected areas, your actions today could determine the difference between a close call and a tragedy. You need to take this seriously. You need to understand that when tornado warnings are issued, they are issued because meteorologists have identified an immediate threat. You need to have a shelter location identified before storms arrive. Whether that is a basement, an interior room without windows on the lowest floor, a storm shelter, or a community shelter, you need to know where it is, and you need to be able to reach it quickly. You should not be watching this video if you are currently under a tornado warning. You should not be waiting for more information. You should not be looking outside. You should not be gathering supplies. You should be in your shelter right now. You should also be sharing this information with everyone you know in this threat corridor. People in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas need to hear this. Your friends, your family members, your co-workers, people you know on social media who live in these areas need to understand that this is not just another spring storm day. This is a day with extraordinarily dangerous tornado potential. This is a day where the meteorological setup is pointing toward the production of significant, violent, potentially long-track tornadoes. This is a day where multiple fatalities are a real possibility if people do not take this seriously and take appropriate shelter. You can potentially save someone's life by sharing this information. The The meteorological community is united in understanding the severity of this setup. The Storm Prediction Center does not issue level 4 moderate risks lightly. They do not issue hatched significant tornado areas for marginal situations. They do not forecast EF2 or stronger tornado probabilities without significant confidence that this outcome is likely. The values that are coming in on the latest model runs confirm what the meteorological community is seeing. CAPE values of 3,500 to 4,500, wind shear of 60 to 75 knots, SRH values exceeding 400, and STP values between 5 and 9. All of these numbers are aligned with the most dangerous severe weather setups in American meteorological history. This is the kind of setup that produced the Joplin outbreak in 2011. This is the kind of setup that produced the April 27th super outbreak. This is the kind of setup that has produced the most significant tornado days on record. As this afternoon and evening unfolds, monitor emergency alerts carefully. Listen to local meteorologists and emergency managers. Take shelter immediately when warnings are issued. Do not delay, do not debate, do not wait for confirmation from multiple sources. When a tornado warning is issued, that is your signal to take shelter immediately. The storms are already here. The tornado threat is already real. Your safety depends on taking immediate action. For those watching this who live outside the threat corridor, understand that the impact of this severe weather will likely extend beyond just tornado concerns. Large hail is a certainty in many areas. Damaging wind gusts are expected. Heavy rainfall could produce localized flash flooding. However, tornadoes are the primary concern because tornadoes are what kill people. Tornadoes are what cause catastrophic damage. Tornadoes are what make this setup so genuinely dangerous. The next 6 to 8 hours are critical. The window between 2 and 5 this afternoon is the most dangerous window. If you're in the threat corridor and you are currently safe and sheltered, stay sheltered through at least the 5 o'clock hour. Do not assume that because a warning expires that the threat has ended. Warnings are issued for specific areas and specific times, but the overall storm threat persists. Stay informed. Stay alert. Take this seriously. The meteorological community is taking this seriously. The Storm Prediction Center is taking this seriously. Your local meteorologists are taking this seriously. The reason they are taking this seriously is because this setup has the potential to be catastrophic. This setup has the potential to produce the kinds of outcomes that we see only during the most significant weather events of the year. Please understand the gravity of this situation. Please share this information. Please take appropriate shelter. Please take this warning to heart. The extraordinary CAPE values, the perfectly aligned wind shear, the abundant moisture, the slow storm motion, the organized supercells already on radar, the professional meteorological judgment expressed in a level 4 moderate risk, all of these factors combine to create a situation that genuinely warrants the word life-threatening. This is not hyperbole. This is not dramatization. This is professional assessment based on the meteorological data. This is expert evaluation based on decades of experience with severe weather. This is a situation where lives are genuinely at risk. Please respond accordingly.